Well, I know we have about 5 more people that were signed up, but we'll just get started. It's about 5 after. Somebody come in? You're looking at somebody here? Oh, okay. You're watching for me. Well, thanks you all for coming. This is really great. I imagine you're looking at the idea of downsizing here in the near future, or in not too distant future, I suppose. But I'm curious, how many people have a bunch of stuff? Yeah, and how much of that is mental stuff? Like, there's kind of a combination of both mental and the things you have, and if they kind of work together to make it intimidating, right? So, oh my, the things you have to take care of, and the bills, and the stuff. So, oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. I'm Fritz, by the way. I think I've met everybody here in the past, but and this is Lynn Johnson, my better half, and we work together as realtors, and also as relocation. We do some relocation management and stuff like that.
And in life.
And so we're partners in business and partners in life. And good morning. Thanks for coming. Did you get the handouts?
Yeah.
So what we wanted to talk about is downsizing. There's the how, there's the process, there's what you need to do, and whether you're decluttering a house or moving to some other place. I mean, the decluttering part is, the problem is always getting started, right? So as long as you're, it doesn't really matter if you know what to do, if it's so hard to get that, take those first steps. And getting mentally prepared to let go of those things. I mean, some of this stuff is, we got a call from a lady who said, please talk to my husband. He wants to take it all with him. And that doesn't exactly work, right? So, eventually, please let go. We've had clients move into smaller spaces, like from 2,500 square feet to 1,000 square feet. And they obviously need to downsize and go through the process, but they pack all that stuff up they wanted to bring, and they bring it to their 1,000 square foot house. And it's like, oh my, well, what can we fit in here? So, and then they have to move it again. And the movers come and bring it all to the new place, and it doesn't fit, and they move it again. We want to sort of see if there's a way to figure out how to do space planning, and we'll talk about that in a little while. And so many people make that decision to move based on the belongings they have. I mean, you have this bed, right? And you have your bedroom furniture, and then you're moving into a new place, and well, it might not have as much room in that room, and yet your hello. So the question is, why are we hung up? Oh, you're Brianna.
Yes.
Nice to see you. I'm Fritz.
Sorry,
Yeah. That's okay. Everybody get a water? They told me that the heating system is, they're trying to work on it. Anybody want some water? Anybody else?
Thank you.
I'll just chuck it to the back of the room. Anybody else? Good. So what we know this needs to be done, right? We know it needs to be done, and there's this internal struggle all the time. And I saw some statistics. Did you know how many items do you think is in the average house in the United States? Anybody want to take a wild guess? No?
I was way off when I guessed.
Yeah.
I was way off.
Try 300,000.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you imagine?
Now, that would include every fork and every knife, right? But But even so, that's average, right? 300,000, and 1 out of 10 Americans rent off-site storage space. Yeah, this is Sherry over here, and Brianna. They're from Greenlight Estate Sales, and they can attest to this. And 25% of people with 2-car garages can't put their cars in the garage. Isn't that something? I mean, I think that's amazing. And the average size of the home has nearly tripled over the last 50 years. I think that's pretty true. The average American woman now owns 30 outfits. Is that about right? Maybe more? In 1930, that was 9.
But she only wears 5.
And so,
The rest we hope to wear someday again.
yeah, in 1930, that average was 9. Isn't that something? Good. It's like almost you have uniforms for
How about
stuff.
the average American man?
Yeah.
How many outfits does he have?
Two. Right, and in the United States, there's upwards of 50,000 storage facilities, not just units. More than 5 times the number of Starbucks. Isn't that incredible? So, you can see we as a culture have a lot of things. And so we'll take a dive deeper here, and now we're on slide 3 in your handout here. What do they represent? So what do our material possessions mean to us? What do they represent in our lives? Why are some things just so hard to give up? And
That's what I want to know.
and some people, it's not so hard, right? There are people that have a bunch of things that they can do or deal with them.
What it is.
Yeah, and it
It
depends.
kind of depends what it is. Everybody has their hot buttons.
So how strong is the attachment? Do you have strong attachment to a lot of things?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Do you?
I'm trying to think. Well, we'll talk about all the things I have at home.
When Emily was a senior in college, she got herself down to 100 things. But she didn't include her school books. But 100 things. That's amazing. 200,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's how strong the meaning is, right? I mean, it depends on where it came from, and we start with nothing, when we're teenagers, we start maybe accumulate a couple of shoes that you really like, but then you go to college and you just have the necessary things. You maybe pick up a beanbag for college, and you don't have much, but then you start to work and you accumulate things.
But what about all your trophies and all that stuff?
Yeah, when do those go in a box? And then for the rest of your life, right? So, and then finally you have everything you want, there's a shift, and now you have a bunch of stuff that you don't need anymore. And that's where the estate sales come in, and that's where, when you decide you're going to downsize, you're kind of forced to at that point, in some cases.
Like you turn 60 and the rollerblades are no longer viable.
Right.
And your kids
Right, or you have a
don't
knee
want anything.
injury, and you keep your rollerblades though, right? Keep them in the closet.
The kids don't want anything?
Oh yeah, the kids don't.
Nothing.
China cabinets. China.
People don't want China.
Right.
Get
The
China
China works.
so cheaply. Round furniture.
So all those things are like a reflection of our personality, right? You think of the things you have, like I have some hobbies. Everybody has hobbies. I have more hobbies than many probably, as she will attest. And I have, like I ski and I have bikes, but then I also have a beehive and a classic car and music gear and
Film
equipment.
equipment.
I mean, anybody have hobbies they really feel strongly about that maybe they're not doing anymore? Because after, hello.
You have to, someone has to move. I've been here before and it's the exact same.
Where do we go? So anybody have any hobbies they want to they're important to them? And so maybe, but as you get older, maybe you used to have those, but you don't, it's part of your identity, right? You're like, you're not gonna get rid of that equipment. And I think we had a client once had a boat in their house and in their garage, and it was taking up car space, and but he wouldn't get rid of it. And he never used it. And then when he passed away, you know, the family had to get rid of the boat. So, you know, it really is part of the identity, and you definitely hold on to these things. And it's also values. I mean, I remember I had a client recently where I did a tour of their house, and everywhere there was pictures of balloons, of him in a balloon. He was a balloon pilot. And now he's moving out of the house, he's downsizing, and you can tell that's his values are all there. I mean, we had golden retrievers. In our house, we had pictures of golden retrievers everywhere all the time. When my daughter was growing up, and we had foster dog, and we had foster care, and Janice has foster care dogs, and you know, that was important to us, and we've had clients like that too. You know, some people have family pictures all over their house. That's their value system. That's what they value. We have paintings in our house too, and some people have their house built as a gallery. You know, so they color the walls of each room so that it matches the paintings they have, and that's where they go. So when you go into their house, you've seen this, and you go into their house and they want a tour, and you don't really look at the house, you're just looking at the artwork. So that's their value. And then accumulation can also be based on circumstances, like your grandparents, and you know, toys, and you know, you can walk into somebody's house and see these things, or there's a medical bed in the living room, and you kind of know what's going on. So those are circumstantial. So I was thinking, you know, when we go to the next slide here, the main reasons we hang on to things are emotion. First one is emotion and sentimentality, and I can think of, I mean, what kind of things do you have that are based on or are kept because of emotion or sentimentality? I can think
tons of stuff.
I can think of one in particular that we have that I don't really use. My mother has collected and printed in these books all of our trips when I was a child, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful to look at, but they're in a box and they just sit there. I feel guilty. I don't want to get rid of them. I think there may be a time when I'll look at them and all the work she put into it. You know? I like it physical. I mean, I don't necessarily like it physical, but more like digital. It would be great if it was a PDF and then it would pop up on my computer, you know, in my screenshots of my schools. How about you? Sentimentally?
Well, you suggested I get rid of all of my CDs, and I wasn't technologically advanced enough to understand that I wasn't really going to miss them. So we still have a box of CDs.
Right. And we're
Just these little things like that each one takes up space.
right. And a chandelier. We had a client who had a chandelier, and she had moved it from house to house because it was a wedding gift. And you know, and then it will never be sold. You know, even if it doesn't fit in the final place it goes. Then there's utility and practicality, so that maybe applies more to men. Right? Like, I have a bunch of boxes of cords in the garage.
You don't have the clients, but you got the board.
I have the cords. They're like computer cords, or HDMI cords, and
Just in
USB cords,
case.
just in case, and there's probably way too many.
There
So the question is, what do? You maybe borrow stuff, and but you have the stuff as practicality. We think, oh, we might need it, right? There might be a time when I need it.
And as soon as you get rid of it, you need it.
And that's right, exactly.
Or you bury it in a box somewhere and you have to go buy another one.
Right, because you can't find it.
That's right. Or
I
it's-
have a
it's-
client who moved 2 years ago, and she was of that vein where she would misplace something. So when she moved, she said to me, "I'm so embarrassed. I have 5 crock pots. So just get buy new ones."
Yeah.
Did you sign
Did-
it?
Did you want? You wanna get a handout? The handouts are there. Yeah, and you can sign it too. Where was I? Identity and image. I talked about the neighbor with the boat. I mean, these are things they're your identity, right? You carry them around. It can be furniture, and then you give it to your daughter, and you're like, and I've given some things to my daughter. Dad, I don't want this. So it's important to me, but hasn't got any interest. So that's one of the things we can do. We can ask, and there's a slide here coming up. Talk about that. And then estate and legacy. We talked about the pictures and the memories and education. You want to give education to your kids. You want to give them a house, but you don't have to give them a house. I mean, there was a situation where one grandpa had kept his tools for years because he wanted to give them to his 7-year-old grandson. And that was the grandson is long before his grandson's going to want that. So which one of these is hardest? We have emotion, sentimentality, utility, financial, identity, estate. Emotion and identity, yeah. I mean, emotion and sentimentality.
Where's emotion and utility?
So do you ever see the comic in there?
Yeah.
One day, son, all this will be yours. You have your garage full. Yeah, I thought that was really funny. So actually, I wanted to point out a book here by David Soley. And this is How to Save to Seniors. And I'll talk about this a little bit here, but there's two main premises here. This is obviously it was written for kids to talk to their parents. But I get the sense that this is like good for parents to know what their kids are doing. So his two main ideas are that you're trying to maintain control. And as you get older and you start to become more have difficulty getting around, and you still want to maintain control. And this is a really important thing. And then the other one is legacy. And you want to keep a legacy and be remembered in some way. So as you get older and older, those become even more important. Doctors are telling you what to do, what you can and can't do. Your family's telling you what you can and can't do. And the family members are well-meaning, of course, but can't drive, don't eat that, and we found a new place for you to live, which is the worst, right? And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. No, forget it. And then it's like, no, I'm not going to do it because you want me to do it, right? And you get, but the key here is like, how do you preempt that? And what does it mean to actually take control? Because you can actually, by actually taking a proactive stance to this and getting these things prepared and organized and scheduled, you are taking control. So that is kind of the paradox of it. But how does that feel, right? How does that feel when everybody's telling you what to do? No, I'm not going to do it. Ironically, when you're fighting for control, you're you're missing out on what you can actually move forward on. So that's the key. Planning ahead when you're able-bodied, when you actually have the power. And so you never know when things are going to change, right? The question is what you have right now getting harder and harder to manage? And so is now the right time to do it. As long as you can sit back and be clear what you want, your family can help you too. So, and I think that's the real important part. When the time comes to follow your wishes, instead of being told what to do, and you can actually plan for it. So then there's the legacy part. How do you want to be remembered? And how do you want to leave something to your kids, your house, or a house, money? But sometimes stories, that's the fun stuff. And that's what David Soley talks about. how can I engage in the conversations to make sure that the parents understand that there's a legacy there and that there's an interest in that. And whether you initiate that whether we initiate that with our kids or the kids initiate that, it's still, the stories are still there. Right? So, if you have a clear in your mind, you have a roadmap. And the key is here letting it go and giving yourself permission to let it go. Have you ever lived in a home and raised a family and then consolidated, and then you probably know people that might have moved into the downstairs 3 or 4 rooms that are on the downstairs floor and they're still there, but the upstairs is now uninhabited, or it's there for the kids, but they don't come back that often. And so, you're not dealing with that stuff. Think of people like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
they're living in the kitchen and the dining room and the
And
den.
a small
and one
bedroom
bedroom.
downstairs with a small bath, because something happened along the way where they might have fallen or been injured unexpectedly, and their house no longer works for them. And that's very sad. It really is, because that's.
And it's not uncommon either.
No, it's not uncommon. I
And
mean,
you're not even looking at their stuff.
no.
They're not even
I mean,
looking
in
at
a flash, your life can change because some accident happened, and now you're having to deal with things where you're sort of behind the 8 ball because you don't have the energy anymore to take care of all of this stuff.
I had a call yesterday from a client up in Cedillo, which is out of town on the way to Edgewood, and they have an acre lot, and the weeds are growing, and the husband just had an injury about 2 weeks ago, and is not necessarily wheelchair bound, but they're all of a sudden they're having real.
Well,
They
it's
have
something they can't
3,500 square foot house. So we're like,
And a
okay,
swimming pool,
and a swimming pool. It's
Yeah,
half
and a
empty because
yard.
it might have a leak in it.
and a
Pardon?
yard,
In the yard.
And a yard.
and
yeah.
weeds, an acre of
Wow.
weeds.
So the question is, how do you reduce the decision? How do you, because all these things are all these micro decisions, many decisions you want to make, and people fret over that. That's a sort of a mind gets muddled, and you're thinking, oh gosh, how do we do this? I mean, I look at my stuff in the garage and I see that, so it's my challenge to go do it myself and get rid of some of the equipment that I'm not using anymore. I used to be in the filmmaking business, and I still have some of those cameras and gear, but I keep thinking, oh, maybe sometime I'll do it again. No, she's right. It's probably never going to happen. But you fret over it. So one of the things to do is, and one of the ways to do it is to do it like give yourself a 30-day challenge, right? To do this. And the first day, you get rid of one thing, and the next day, 2 things. And this is not 2 knives, okay? So, and then you have 3 things, and on you go for 30 days. So you give yourself that challenge, and you know what happens after about probably the 10th or the 12th day? It's like you've got this habit going, and all of a sudden you're getting some momentum going. You've seen that.
Plus 1 room at a time.
Plus 1 room at a time.
Otherwise, it's way overwhelming.
I saw a thing on TV where each month you choose 1 room. So you've got January you do.
Yeah, that's cool
February
too.
it's just right there. You know?
It's
right.
like trying to eat an elephant.
Yeah.
Small bites.
So I started that. I did January really well. It's now what, May?
Oh.
I haven't done anything since January. It was a good idea. I
Maybe it's a
thought.
wintertime activity.
It's thank you. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's
That's
right. You're
it.
stuck at home. You can get rid of those things, but then you have to
But
try
it
it
was
somewhere.
pretty cool in January to try it.
Yeah.
I've got 1 very clean room.
Well, that's great.
That's great. And the big furniture. So the big furniture you want to keep, just as I think we're going to talk about. I was going to mention this later, but the big furniture you want to keep in there, as the estate sale people will test, that's what generally brings people to the estate sales.
Oh, really?
Because and you think about it, well, nobody's going to go to the estate sale for half a bottle of cleanser, but that's going to sell at the estate sale, right?
Exactly.
Recruit, okay.
Yeah, you gotta have some big stuff.
Yeah,
For the
big
estate
stuff.
sale.
Yeah.
And then they start buying the little stuff.
Yeah, and don't get rid of your clothes, don't give them to Goodwill. In fact, don't touch the house. Just let the estate sale come in and take care of everything. Just don't touch it. Get the most important things out, get your papers out, and then tell them if there's anything we missed, because you always miss something. Say, put a box in one of the closets and leave, and put anything you find that shouldn't be in your hands in that closet, and let me deal with it later, because you will never find everything. When you've got 20 people running around your house like cockroaches, they're gonna find stuff you would have never found. And you just let them do everything. Don't walk in and say, oh, I'm gonna help them out and I'll get rid of my clothes, or I'll get rid of this, because we can sell half a bottle of lotion, okay? We can make money on anything, so do not get rid of anything.
Well, would you clarify that by saying that you've already taken the things out of your house?
That you're
you
gonna
wanna
take.
keep
Yes.
and move to the next
Yes.
And
thing.
we'll talk about that.
So that's,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good, I just wanted to clarify
Right.
that.
But, yeah.
That's the hard.
Sorry for getting off subject.
That's
No,
okay.
no, it's
That's okay.
helpful.
So we have this. I think I sort of talked a little bit about the graph here, where this almost looks like Arthur Laffer's curve, doesn't it? If you know that. But we start with nothing. You accumulate by college, and then by middle age, you've reached your peak of all the things you have, and then you have to start getting rid of them. And as an empty nester, children have left the house. You start to pack up things, and you can see at the top, there's you're starting to get rid of the first things. Now, you know the estate sale may come at a later date when you're actually doing the major downsizing, but you might want to start decluttering at this certain point, and it's not necessarily going to be the estate sale, and that's where we start to get
What
started.
is DS1 and DS?
Those are downsizing.
Downsizing.
So you actually might downsize from your 3,500 square foot house
Okay.
to 2,000 square foot house, like we're in right now, and then eventually you downsize into maybe something smaller. So, but sometimes you're gonna put your stuff in the attic, or you're gonna it's not gonna be given away or taken care of, and you'll still have it. But you might change a room to an exercise room or a sewing room. So so it's a lot easier to downsize when you choose it, and I think that's the point we're making here. When you're forced to. The second downsizing is maybe when you need assisted living or memory care, or the lights turned on.
There we go.
I think maybe it's that over there. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah. Keeps us awake.
And then death. If you haven't taken care of it, if you've died and you haven't taken care of it, it gets
Not your
left.
problem anymore.
It gets left, and that's the joke here. So that's the joke on the next page.
I love that.
A major perk of death is that you don't have to clean up after yourself. Yeah? If you can't muster the courage to deal with your 3 storage units, leave the contents to your heirs.
No, only the dumpster.
And then what are your heirs? You don't have to deal with it anymore. And mention in the will, there is something valuable in one of the storage units. And it's very small.
That's a good one.
I like that. So, this is cute too. I like this. I don't remember where I got this, but this was a text that one lady sent to her kids. Hi there. I have a question for you, and I need you to think about and respond before such and such a date. What, if anything, of ours would be important enough to you that you would want it in the event we died in the next 12 months, and why? What makes it important to you, or why would you want it? It's not meant to be morbid, and it's a serious question. So, the kids will probably appreciate this. And now, I know there was the story here that they want access to their iCloud photo bank. Something as simple as that for memories. And we can share pictures. And it could be any number of things. Here's some common items of attachment. Does anybody have these things in there? Oh yeah. So here.
What page are you on?
Yes.
We're on page,
Copy.
we're on slide 12, common items of attachment. Anybody have any there that is not on the list?
Art supplies.
Art supplies? Yeah? Any more? China? I think you know, handmade items.
Silver.
Knickknacks.
Oh, I put vinyl records down. I know I have a couple boxes of vinyl records. What am I ever gonna do with those? Yeah. And one of them is the Beatles' Please Me album. It's probably worth something, but you know what? I went online at one point and looked on eBay to see what those vinyl albums were being sold for. $1. It's not worth the time, right? So you do that at a garage sale or an estate sale, even better. Actually, you probably would be able to advertise, you know, first edition books and stuff like that. I wanted to point out another. Now that we're on the item of actual things, here's a cool book we got, and I actually, an estate attorney just sent me one of his presentations where he talks about, and my sister actually turned us on to this too, Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate Workbook. And this is from University of Minnesota Extension Press, and it's quite good, but it's basically for the personal property. It's not for title property. This is for personal property. So the difference, title property is cars and vehicles and houses and rental properties. All the title property is not this. This is all about grandma's pie plate. Maybe
Well, and the idea is to make sure that all of your children get to have a say, and you invite them to talk about what's important, because you never know what could be important. Like my daughter every once in a while says, you know, that thing that I really like that, Mom. Would you put my name on it? And without, you know, if you don't ask the question, then you're not honoring what your children would like, and I think it makes you feel better as a parent. To
That
know.
book also gives you proposals for several different methods by which to distribute your estate. And there are lots of options and conversation starters and everything in that book.
Right.
It's good. It has the words to
Yeah.
use.
It has the words.
So that
Yeah.
everybody feels comfortable.
And you can choose how you want to handle it, and there's several ideas in there about how to do that.
Yeah, and it's because people have different degrees of sentimentality for the stuff, and so you and your siblings, everybody might look at different items in the house in a different way, and the emotions are what makes it challenging. Causes more problems even than the title property oftentimes, just because of the sentimental value. But what's cool about it is that it gives you approaches to figure out what each sibling thinks is fair. Because fair is a different, people all look at fairness in a different way. What's that?
There's no fair.
There's no fair. Boy, I think the timing is giving me lessons. So, and the meaning's different. So what's important? And we want to maintain family relationships. I think that, and getting what you deserve, and people think of it's their personal stories and how they relate to the stories that are behind those items. So that gets us to actual downsizing plan. And I want to point out that I am a member of the KW Planner community, where we try, the key here, actually you can see that the line underneath there for some reason got all scrambled, I'm not sure, but that says helping you build, protect, and transfer wealth. And the idea with our community is to help people mitigate taxes, help people prevent family disputes, and part of that is the personal property, obviously, but in the case of the real estate, it's the title property. And then building a real estate plan. And I'd like to point out here, one of the ways, this is kind of the direction we take, when actually selling your house or downsizing or moving down, you're selling and buying, and we would make a plan like this through the month. And I didn't carry it on, but the idea is to go, and then usually it takes 2 to 3 months to get both sides of that done, because clearly gonna be moving from, if you're downsizing, you're clearly, once you've got things organized and cluttered, you're gonna be moving from one place to the other, and you're kind of time it so that you can do the move at the same time that you already purchased a house or found a house to live in. So, and that's the key. I mean, we especially in this market right now, we want to be buying something or making arrangements to have something available for you before you start the move or put your house in the market. So it's important. It's really important.
It really helps to know where you're gonna go. Otherwise,
Is that a schedule? Like,
yeah.
Well, this is I put this down just to kind of show, you know, how we, and that's what I'll talk about the next pieces of it.
okay.
But this would be individualized for depending on your each person's needs. So this is what we customize and make for each person, for everybody who actually starts the process. And so we'll talk about this. And
Okay.
there's pieces to this, you know, and we have our kind of 12-step.
Well,
The
sometimes,
12-step program. Everybody heard about that before? This is not.
sometimes
This is
there's-
not the 12-step program you're thinking of.
Sometimes there's different financial circumstances, but probably the most ideal is if you can buy the next little house before you sell your house, then you know exactly how much space you're gonna have, how to space plan it, which furniture you're gonna take from the big house to the little house. That doesn't always work for everybody, but if it can, it's a good way to do it. I just,
And you could be under contract with contingencies, you know, on both sides of it, and have the but you know, the market right now is really robust and it's picking up again. So I think what we have about 1,400 houses on the market.
yeah, usually, we have 5,000 in the Albuquerque metro area, which includes Rio Rancho, Los Lunas, East Mountains, Placitas, and we only have 1,400 right now. So
So
it
it's a-
shows how low the inventory is, which makes it tough.
But this first picture, whether now or later, the hard truth is that everyone eventually downsizes. Another bit of levity, okay? If you don't do the process of downsizing, you know somebody else is going to do it for you. So instead of saying I'm just going to leave it to my kids to sort out, you can actually take those steps. There may be a planner in your household, and you know they want to get things all done and all planned out. And other people other in the household say this is too morbid. Maybe the spouse says I don't want to talk about it. I can't talk about it. But the question is, you know, when the daughter says, "Wait, well, we have to talk about it. You know, what about the relationship of the kids? Me and my brother have a good relationship, but we don't agree on everything. So, you know, if you settle these things beforehand, then you're going to be better off, right?"
We've had siblings fight over a house for 8 years. So by the time that we got in there, because a lawyer ended up just saying, okay, now you guys just have to have an estate sale company and you can split the funds from the estate sale. So we ended up coming in, but everything was dusty and broken because it had been in there for 8 years.
Oh, so this was a fight over personal,
Yeah, the
not
siblings were
title
fighting
property.
over
Junk
the
in the
personal.
house.
Yeah,
So-
see. So we've seen that for
It was really sad.
Not the house, junk in the house.
And
And
by then, I mean, it was treasures 8 years before, and by the time we got in there,
it was
Because the house wasn't even maintained for 8 years.
I mean, the pipes were busted, it was,
Rodents?
somebody was paying 8 years, the lights on in that house. So, I mean, you don't want that.
No, that's really sad.
No, and we've seen that with, you know, the house too, a lot. Where and that's what's cool, if you can actually plan on like selling rental property or selling your house or.
How do you plan on selling? Like, you really, isn't it better to live in the house while you're selling for tax purposes?
Yes. So if you stay or even keep your house, if if your near end of life is, it would be advantageous from a tax standpoint to keep your house, because when you die, the basis of the house gets stepped up. So, but that really only matters because there's section 121 says that each spouse gets $250,000 of deduction in the house, and that's good for 2 years after one spouse dies. So So you still get $500,000 in deduction if you move out of your house, or you sell your house. I mean. But if your house is worth, more, and there's a difference between the $250,000 deduction and your basis, then you pay taxes on that. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that if it just depends on how much the tax is. Sometimes it's not worth struggling with if it's a smaller amount, but if it's, other people in the planner group that are in California, they're selling houses that are worth $3 million, $4 million that the parents bought for $300,000 25 years ago. That's where it really makes a difference, and you can structure that to sell the house, or there's ways to structure that so that you don't pay the taxes, or you just keep it in your name until you die, and then it gets past your kids with a stepped-up basis. So
Like if you have
there's no
rentals,
tax.
how many times can you do the move of moving to a house, stay there for 2 years and sell it?
Correct.
Can you do that?
As
How
many times as you want to. You just have to be living in it 2 out of the last 5 years.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to do it every 2 years, I have friends who are actually who move every 2 years. They've been doing it for 20 years. They move every 2 years, and they're able to keep the money that they earn, or it's tax-free money every time they move. So
That's a lot of effort.
it's a lot of effort to move, but it's also they accumulate. But then you can imagine that if they save $250,000 in taxes every time they move, or they save the taxes on $250,000 or $500,000 every time they move.
It's
And
hard to accomplish that in Albuquerque. I mean, we don't have that huge gain
yeah. So
in
these
equity.
guys actually bought houses that would need fixing. So they created a lot more value by living in it and fixing it while they're there. But does that answer your question as well?
Yeah, a little bit. We have 3 rentals that the kids don't want to do anything with them.
Okay.
They grew up helping clean up every rental, so they're like, they want nothing with this rental.
So with the rentals,
we want to take care of that before.
yes. So there are ways to avoid taxes entirely in that, and we can talk about that another time. Absolutely. So they're fed up with the work and the management of it, even.
Yeah, they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Even like we ask them, we give them to you for half a price or less, and then they feel like that's unfair. So it's like, they're like, it's your money, you should do anything you want to. And it's like, so
Right.
they have good jobs and they don't really want anything. So we're stuck with 3 rentals.
Yeah. Well, and then you can't sell them because there's too much of a tax liability.
Actually, it's a gold mine. You have 3 rentals.
Yeah, and they need inventory.
Yeah,
I
so-
don't want to pay how much money.
No, that's
to
right.
tax.
There's ways to do that. We could talk about. There's ways to avoid the taxes.
Okay.
Yeah. On the rentals, it's much easier. On a primary residence, you're limited to the $500,000 in gain over your basis. So everybody know what that is? So the basis is the price you bought the house for. And so if it's a primary residence, there's no depreciation on primary residence. So it's just what you bought the house for and any improvements you've made since you've owned it. So if you put in a new kitchen and you have all the receipts for the $25,000 kitchen you put in 10 years ago, then your basis is now higher. So when you sell your house and say your basis is $200,000 and you sell your house for $400,000, you've got $200,000 in gain. But the IRS gives you $250,000 per spouse in tax-free gain. Okay, for each. If your basis was $200,000 and you just sold your house for $1 million now, all of a sudden you've only got everything above $700,000 is going to be taxed. Make sense? $200,000 basis, $500,000 tax-free money, and then the last $300,000 will be taxed at capital gains, which is about 20%. Okay. Where was I? The story of. Let's see. Kids, it's hard sometimes. Okay, we already talked about that. That's what the.
You were saying that the correct.
yeah, I did, yeah, so choose to be proactive. For this, that's what, so this downsizing method, or this step-by-step process, is for those who wanna be proactive, so we're, and stay ahead of the game, who wanna make their own decisions instead of having them enforced on you, have decided to make it a little easier for their kids, instead of leaving that stuff to them, and are looking for a step-by-step process. So the elephant in the downsizing room here. So, there's a lot of things. You can see I read recently that there are some 200 steps involved in closing a house, in selling a residence, and moving it to a new place. So from a downsizing perspective, it's great to have. It's so much better to have some help, some professional help, people who've done it before, estate planners, move managers,
A realtor who understands.
your needs,
challenges.
actually, and that's the key here, to understand your needs, and mortgage brokers, everybody. So there's a lot of steps to actually move from one place to another, depending on the professions. Okay. You see all those things that in the down? Can you read that? In the downsizing, the elephant. So the best thing to do is to make 2 plans. Turn the light on is the first.
Maybe you should put your chairs over there.
I know, but I'm not really moving. It's keeps us alive. And so make 2. The key here is to start off this off is to make 2 plans. Your perfect, ideal plan, and then the secondary plan, the acceptable plan. Because things can happen. You don't know what's going to happen, especially if you maybe after you've started the process, you get injured, and then you're not going to have to move into your second plan, because that's not exactly, the first plan is not before that happens.
One of the things about making a plan, an ideal plan or an acceptable plan, is it's a long-term process. It usually takes 4 to 6 months to find the house that you want, 30 to 45 days to close on that house. So, and then estate people often don't have available schedules for 4 or 5 months out. Easy, okay. So that's always good to think about, because you would never imagine that it's going to take this long, and it's a long-term process that you got to think about and sort of plan on.
Yeah, and that's why in this step 2 here is to arrange for the relocation support. So you estate sale, get information from estate sales, and then you're going to be maybe wanting to make some home updates, so you'll be working with some contractors. You're going to make having the movers come in, so we find out about the mover schedule. So you can see there's some moving parts to this, and it's good to kind of have a feeling about what all those are going to look like before you get started. And we talked about letting go of the non-essentials. There are some things that won't sell in an estate sale, but you generally want to have an estate sale person come to your house and tell you, because I know there's things. We've gone to the houses and I'm thinking that's not going to sell, but the estate sale people come and no, we want to keep this here. It'll almost definitely sell. Like you were talking about earlier.
Right. It's funny because the thing you think would never sell would be the first thing out the door. That's the fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's like somebody else's junk is somebody else's treasure, and you
Right.
never know in advance.
Exactly.
So how much, you're going to find out how much, when, and what are things really worth. When I've seen estate sale people check out belongings in a house, sometimes it's the opposite of what they think, what's valuable and what's not valuable. And it happens often. Pianos are hard to sell, right?
They're so hard to sell.
They're hard to sell, and yet they're so easy to buy for so much. So I know that I'm on the board of the New Mexico Philharmonic, and they just bought a piano last year. It's a concert grant, and the best piano players in the world play on it. But I mean, do you know how much a Steinway piano costs? A concert grand? Is that any idea? Any idea? $150,000.
Oh my God.
It's like, that's how much I bought a house, my first house. Like, oh my gosh. But you can't sell that piano quickly for $20,000.
No,
It's the green one.
green one also, yeah.
Oh, there's another one.
Oh, perfect.
There's the
Yeah.
Thunderbird, yeah, anyway.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's good.
Very good. Oh, thanks.
That was my sister, by the way. See that? Okay. And what about improving your house? So a realtor can tell you about that, or a contractor. Mostly a realtor is going to say, well, you probably don't want to change the countertops because the next person who's going to come in is and you might not get as much. If you're doing it for the sake of selling your house, you might not get as much. You more than likely won't get as much. That's an improvement you want to make for yourself. But you know, if the carpets are dirty, you almost definitely want to do that. So there's a variety of different kinds of things in the house that you're wanting to upgrade and repair to make it sellable for the best dollar.
For example, the roof would be helpful to be in good shape. Some of the mechanicals you might want to replace. The aesthetic items are not as important, especially in the market that we're in now with low inventory. Buyers are more willing to say, you know, I want to make it my own. I want to put in hardwood floors, or I want to put in luxury vinyl tile, and I don't want all this carpet. So we recommend usually mechanicals and the roof if those things need to be addressed.
And really clean.
By mechanicals.
If you need a new, you know, like if you have
If your water heater's showing any signs of
hot water heater,
a problem.
sometimes the heater in the air conditioner, or sometimes swamp cooler, those kinds of things, they're not very exciting things, but they're what makes the house work. So those things can be replaced if they're really old.
So you don't recommend redoing your kitchen or bathroom?
No, because that's such a personal thing
Thank
for
you.
buyers.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Okay.
And it's a lot of hard work.
And
I
a
mean,
lot of time and.
It's
And it is very
expensive.
expensive.
You know, I
Yeah.
just had a client look at a house long distance. He's in LA, and he looks at this house and he said, well, the kitchen was all redone, but I can't stand it. He said, so I'm gonna rip it all out. Well, that's unfortunate. Because he really likes the house, but he didn't like the style
Yeah.
of how they redid the kitchen. Most people aren't gonna argue about a swamp cooler or a heater. They don't care, just as long as it works well and it's not real old.
But what really is important is make sure it's clean. So the deep cleaning process and the painting, oftentimes painting really will make the house shine.
And it's really, those kinds of things are just gonna make the house sell more quickly.
And
It's
shine.
not and sparkle. It's not necessarily gonna make the house sell for more money.
Right.
It'll just sell a little more quickly, cause
Okay.
then the new buyer won't have as many things to do.
Okay.
And they'll see it as clean. So how far in advance are, you know, I think I was, sometimes the movers can be like 3 months in advance. So this is all, when we're talking about making a plan, you sort of are getting out there, and that's the first call I would make. So if you wanted to, if you're thinking about moving and buying another house, the first thing we call is to see how far out the movers are, so we can make that plan to, and you know, you don't want to get Joe Schmo mover either, so you want your stuff to be intact when you get there.
Plus,
To your next
local
place.
moves are usually easier to schedule than an out-of-state move or across the country move. They'll take longer, but in town, there's some options.
Right. So there you have it. That's that. And then we secure the new residence and establish an approximate move date. It can take a while to wrap your head around the new lifestyle, obviously. 80%. Did you know that 80% of people age in place? They don't move into an independent living facility or community. I didn't know that. I thought it would be much higher that people would move to independent living and all these wonderful facilities communities that have the dining room and, you know, you just
They're too
have,
expensive.
you have a little apartment. Well, you
They're
know, in
super
terms of,
expensive.
in terms of the convenience they offer and.
It's
and
very
we have-
convenient, but they're super expensive.
Yeah, it can be. So, but, you know, aging in places can be expensive too, once, if you start to become incapacitated. So, and you need help. My father needs a lot of, right now, he got injured and he has, you know, 8-hour care. And that's, it's adding up. But, you know, he prefers that, he can afford it, so it's good for him. But, you know, the question is, would he be better off in a community? Maybe, my parents might be, but, you know, they have a nice house, they like to entertain still, so it's there, and they can do it. But yes, it's expensive. the home care is expensive. And then we had our, last time we had our, was anybody here for the long-term care?
Mm-hmm.
Presentation with the long-term, yeah, last time. So, get an idea of what that's like. Yeah, but I was surprised about the 80%. So 20% of people go to senior communities, and very rarely do they, you know, go there, find it, and sign the dotted line. So, you know, it's one of those things you have to think about. You see a bunch of places. We have a guy that will have come and when we talk about senior communities in the future, he'll come and he'll talk about how he will do an assessment. He can figure out what's the top 3 or 4 communities that would be most viable for you, and then you can go visit them and see. So again, it's a long-term process, but it's good to have somebody like that who's familiar with all 60. Well, I think there's 160 communities in Albuquerque, or 140, something like that. But he says only 60 or 70 of them are up to his standard, and so then he'll whittle them down based on your needs. So he does a free interview. I give you his information, and he really knows the communities in town. Do you know Wes?
Yes, I knew you were talking about Wesley. I knew you were,
okay.
yes.
Okay. Yeah,
He's amazing. He helped me with my grandma. Find a perfect spot for my grandma.
yeah, he's really good. So, if anybody is interested in that, my mother's has already spoken with him, and she's wanting to, you know, at least know which communities she's going to like, and, you know, she has not made any kind of move to do so, but it's really good. She's probably a couple years, maybe more, away from having to make that decision. Again, that's a very proactive approach. Set a firm date and get on the schedule for professional movers, contractors, estate sellers, and etc. And then space planning. So, you know, you're going to go from a 3,000 square foot house to a 1,200 square foot house, or senior living community. Bye. Did you sign? Did you have to sign in? Okay. All right. Thanks a bunch.
And all contracted.
Okay. Thanks for coming. So it's so much less expensive to figure out what gets moved before you move once and then move again, as you can imagine. If you take all that stuff to, so what we do is help, like, create a floor plan of the new space that you're going to be in, and Wes has those too, of all the, especially, he's just for the senior communities, but if you're going to be moving into a house, we would get the floor plan and figure out what items are going to be important to you, and you can move in there. We have software programs to help with that. So it's so much less expensive than to bring too much stuff to that house and then hire the movers to move it again. So that's what we want to prevent. You can also do that yourself too. You obviously get grid paper, figure out what items are going to go in your house.
There's a book. My last business, that's what I did. I owned
Space Management?
BBQ errands, and that's what I did. And it's funny because I started out getting keys for people when they were locked out of their car, and the next thing I know, I'm helping seniors move into senior living. And there is a book, and I can see the book. I can't tell you what it's called. It's very thin, but it has grid paper and it has different size couches and different pieces of furniture, and you actually cut it out and sit on the graph paper. And I would sit with these people, and we would take, like, okay, so this is 6 feet, so we would get the little couch that was 6 feet, 6 squares long, and we would put it here and say, and I would actually show them, you know, how things were gonna be set up. And then, when I did move them, we took pictures of everything. And you had to, when you moved that bookshelf over, the movers were told, you will follow this and you will put these books back exactly the way you picked them up, so that they can walk in and feel immediately like they're still home. It's much less stressful.
Right.
That's
And
great.
so that's the next slide, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Perfect.
No,
No, it's perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. No, that's great.
Oh, thank you.
Sherry's right. So the idea is to mark everything and color code it with markers, and so that you know which room it's going to be going to in the next residence. We can make the space planning on a computer now, so in the same
Yeah, I
way.
didn't do it on.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of, if you like the idea of cutting stuff out, I actually like to know that resource, so you can find it. If you want to email me
That
that,
is
book, we can figure out what that resource is. That
Share it with us.
that could be fun, and we can
Yeah.
share it. I'll put it on the
Okay.
website. Yeah. But we can also do it on a computer and measure your stuff and drag it in. I use something called 3D Home. But the key is to actually, once you've got the space planning done, figure out what you're going to bring, mark it with color-coded stickers, and off it goes. And I think that's a good idea. I actually haven't heard of putting the books back exactly the way they were. But
Yeah,
that's going to
it's
depend on
fine.
you, the customer, for that. So how detailed you want it. Or if I were moving and I think I'd leave the books behind because everything's on my iPad now. I saw a very funny panel where a panel comic where this guy was in his library, and the huge library was completely empty, but it was his big house. Obviously, he lived in a big mansion, and he had a library with one of those library ladders on it. He says, now everything's on my iPad, and I don't need this anymore. So this whole wall of books is empty.
Well, you also have to negotiate with your spouse.
Yes, that's
I'd wanna bring some books.
yeah. It's not no books, but I do have a bookshelf, though. I just have not pulled a book out of it for a while.
Yeah, I know that.
You know that.
Yeah.
You know exactly what you're talking about.
So, yeah, it's not funny. Load, move, and unload, and this is all about once you know exactly what's moving. The movers are going to be able to tell you what it's going to cost, but they cost by the hour. So there's usually 3 guys by the hour, and they're moving stuff. So sometimes they'll actually take a whole bureau full of goods and just close it up with that flex stuff they use at Home Depot on those pallets, and take the whole thing with all the stuff in it, unless it's China, of course. Probably not a good idea. Unpack and settle into your new place, and this is where you have somebody else come and get the boxes because you don't want to deal with that mess. The key also is that you don't, when you are packing, you don't want to go to the local liquor store and get the liquor store boxes because they're all different sizes. So the movers then have to figure out how to pack stuff in the moving van. It takes much longer. So if you can get all the same size boxes, essentially, for the different kinds of rooms. I mean, some of they have different size boxes, obviously. You want to keep it to 2 or 3 different sizes. And then you empty the previous residence. Did I cover everything on that one?
Storage?
Yeah, you mean like a storage unit?
Is that what that means? I thought we were getting rid of that. storage
Right,
unit.
I crossed that one.
No. Okay. So
Oh,
yeah.
emptying that storage unit.
Where are you here?
Okay.
26.
Okay. So storage. You might have storage, but I want to say that's really temporary. That's for things that your kids are going to come and get after you've moved out, and you might put it in a storage unit for a month, and then tell them this is yours. So if you want to come and get it, come and get it. Otherwise, it's either going to be sold or you're going to pay for the storage unit. So, and and keep those storage facility owners happy. But yeah, that it's important that's why I have it there, is to mention, you know, we're just doing this temporarily. We want to give you these things. Yeah, as I mentioned before, that's the first thing I do is call the movers and figure out what the schedule is. So, and then you prepare your previous residence for sale. So, you know, you close up the dog door or fix the dog door or the vertical blinds. I know people have sometimes missing vertical blinds in there, so we make sure all the stuff is clean and tidy, and make sure the locks were clean the house. Fill the nail holes, paint. I mean, that's the simple stuff. You don't want to get too terribly involved.
So you're not talking about getting rid of the dog door or vertical blinds, you're just
No,
saying
well,
make
maybe get
sure-
rid of the vertical blinds or replace them with something else. If you've got spares, yeah, you can fix them. But
Okay.
if it looks, you know,
Old and
there was a house I did an open house on a couple weeks ago, and I called the guy from the other broker and said, "This is really gonna, you know, people are gonna try and whittle you down on the price. It just looks untidy, and sloppy."
Okay.
So yeah, they had like missing vertical blinds. They had the windows were dirty.
Okay.
You know, it didn't pass, and it makes a difference. Yeah. So
You don't have to do it all.
no,
You know,
I
as
just
a
clean things up.
realtor, you know, we help do that, and we also schedule and recommend people
Okay.
that can do all of that stuff
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
to make it easy on you.
But that's what's important to do, to make sure you get the right price for your house.
Okay.
Otherwise, people think, well, if it's looking sloppy like this now, what do they do with the rest of the house, and what's hidden that I don't know about? So, okay. And then we place your house on the market and actively sell it, and it's sold. And the last slide on the 12-step program is relax, reflect, and recover. So does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Marty?
If you're not going to, do an estate sale, if you're going to dispose of things in chunks, where do you recommend getting rid of them? The trash can?
Well, it depends. I think it's important for you to have an estate sale person come if you're thinking about if there's a lot of stuff. I mean, if it's a couple of things.
300,000 average? If there's a
300,000.
lot of stuff,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of.
There's a lot of stuff. So it's good to have an estate sale person come and visit, and just give you a sense of what you can do with it, what's going to make sense to keep for an estate sale. Estate sales charge 40% typically.
Typically, yes.
And do you charge to come out and do an evaluation?
No.
So yeah, and and then the question is, how much does it cost to move it? An estate sale, they're going to tell you to keep the big stuff, obviously, as I mentioned before. But
Unless it's just rad, you know.
if it's ratty furniture, then we'll go in the garbage. You know,
Right.
I know. I carried around a desk I used, which was 2 doors for quite some time. As I was younger, and that got thrown away. And also furniture that just it was from Home Depot, office furniture, and finally just gave way. It was particle board and that kind of stuff.
Hard move.
Yeah.
But even nice furniture usually goes for like 20 cents or 10 cents on the dollar. I just had a client who had a 4,600 square foot house, and her husband had passed away 10 years, and she had gorgeous furniture. It's like the china and the silver. Nobody really wanted it, and so it was difficult to sell.
And it was
And
beautiful
it
too.
took a long time. It was beautiful, really high quality furniture, but
Sometimes if you can remember the maker's name, like if it's Amish
Or
or
Eaves
Ethan
chair.
Allen,
or
things like that.
Drexel, or,
Right,
you
if it's
know.
Drexel, people love Drexel. So if you can remember what the name is and let us know, say, hey, I bought this, at so and so, we will add that to the advertisement, and a lot of the times just the name itself will help sell the furniture, even if it's not best condition, people love knowing where it came from. They love that.
See, that's what I was gonna say, that we just get
Even
under
now
there
and
and
stuff
start
like
looking
that,
for
Yeah,
like
sometimes
the
they
labels.
have, sometimes you can find
Most
it,
times,
sometimes
most
you
times it's
can't.
labeled.
Yeah, sometimes it's labeled.
It's just there's not a huge market for
Right, not a huge
for that, and there's also advertising limitations. You know, where do you put it? Do you put it on Craigslist? Do you put it on,
That's a good question, you wanna tell
you
me?
know, do you put it on Facebook Marketplace?
She's my
Marketer.
advertising chickie, yeah.
I typically, well, first of all, we have a mailing subscription
Sure.
for about, almost 4,000?
We're almost at 4,000,
Almost 4,000.
and about
people.
75% try to come to almost everything.
We always do Craigslist. There's also estatesales.net, but they charge $100 per advertisement, and that will usually come out of whatever we make from the client. We'll remove
From their proceeds.
from their proceeds. We will remove that $100.
And we only do that if the house is like gallery,
Yeah.
you know, otherwise it's just a normal house like mine.
If it's a
we
mansion,
just-
something like that, we'll
Mhm.
typically do that
Mhm.
as well. We advertise to our mailing
TikTok, do you
subscription.
do TikTok too?
TikTok? I don't, but mostly because most of the customers that come to our sales don't have a
They're-
TikTok. It's more of a Gen Z kind of, you know. And Gen Zs don't have any money. Generally, they don't. They're gonna bring their mom to pay for things.
And the other thing I think on Craigslist, you kind of have to be careful because there's some fraud out there. You're actually inviting someone that you don't know into your home to look at your furniture, and it exposes you to some
Scary stuff.
Jeopardy. Yeah.
scary stuff. 'Cause
Scary
then
stuff.
that person knows where you live
Right.
and knows all of the contents in your house because they just come to look.
Yeah,
And so some people don't want to do that at all.
no, that'd
So
be,
it's
they do
states-
it through estate sales, yeah.
Yep.
Or meet them, when we sell something, like when we're just tired of something and we don't wanna ask if we can put it in someone's house, we will meet them at the police station with the piece, throw it in the back of the truck. I'm gonna meet you at the police station on such and such
Yeah.
at 4:00. You don't need to know where I live, you don't need to know anything about me, you're gonna hand me money, you're gonna look it over, you're gonna hand me money, you're gonna put it in your truck, and goodbye.
And it's cash.
And it's
Yeah.
cash, never take
Never
a check,
take a check.
never take a check.
And don't do PayPal
Yeah.
or
None of it,
Zelle
none of it.
or any of that stuff.
Cash, and that's it.
and I would recommend taking somebody with you.
Always take someone with you, always meet at the police station, fire station, something like that.
So I mean, it's
Or you-
really an effort to make sure you're.
Oriental rugs, yeah.
Do they sell?
But-
They
Yes.
sell like,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
we have appraisers, okay, so, almost every house, we get in there, we're in your home for 2 weeks, can I do this?
Sure.
Okay, we're in your house for 2 weeks. The first week, we pull everything out of every little crevice and find a place for it. The second week, the first half of the week, we bring in appraisers, okay? So if we get some beautiful Asian rug, we're not gonna go, well, the last one we sold, well, sometimes we do. But most of the time, we say, the last one we sold went for $1,000, but we don't know about this one. Let's bring somebody in who can actually tell me what this is worth today.
'Cause they
Not-
follow the market.
Yeah,
And they'll
because
plug
they
it from
follow
somebody.
the market.
From
So-
Seraphims, like, for instance, Seraphims, do you use?
I do not.
So, but there's a couple of stores in town.
Right, but Seraphins is going to be,
Seraphims, I guess.
I always said Seraphins also, but that they're gonna be, brand spanking new
Yeah, but
that day, where we're dealing with used, but still, if we can turn it over and find, who made it and it's some really great piece, you really want, and they're not called appraisers when an estate sale does it, they're called evaluators, okay? And so you want an evaluator to come in and tell you exactly what that's worth, and we do that. We bring in a whole bunch, all different ones, and each one has their own area of expertise.
The reason we call them evaluators when they come is because usually an appraiser, once they appraise an item, they have to write up a certificate of appraisal. And we don't have time for that because they're gonna come in and be, and
It may
look
be
at
good.
hundreds of items.
There may be,
A few
there may be
items where they need to.
there's some carpets like a Nain or
Right,
stuff that's
right.
silk and, there's some carpets that you'd wanna have an appraiser appraise. There's
Appraise,
pianos
right.
like, I know that 88 Keys would probably buy a Steinway piano, for instance. There's certain kinds of things that have high ticket items that you can actually get appraisal on.
Yeah, and let's, in 88
And maybe
Keys-
even put in an auction, same with the artwork.
Yes, and actually, sometimes, let's say we come across something seriously magnificent, then I will just call a business and say, here's what I have, do you wanna buy it?
Either
They're
that,
not gonna haggle with price, they know what they've got, and they go, yes, or we've got 3 already, something like that.
either that or a known artist, if you've got an original of a known artist.
Oh, yeah,
That
definitely.
might actually go to Handemans or one of the art, auction galleries.
Right.
So,
Weems has come in, one of our best, evaluators is a Weems, I wanna
and
call
Bill
him-
does evaluations on art.
Say it again.
Bill does it for you guys, doesn't he do evaluations for
Does
you?
Bill? He used to, but now that he started his own business, he doesn't have time for us.
Okay,
But, he actually is an encyclopedia with legs,
yeah.
abilities.
So, yeah, that's a competitor, but it's good to, get a couple of opinions on obviously.
You always get 3 estate sale companies, never less than 3.
So Bill's with Thunderbird. We also have, and the other one we recommend is Wings. So,
No,
no,
no.
Wings?
I love Paul, but, I'm gonna be honest with you, nobody told him I said this, do not go with Wings. Wings, when Beverly Hubbard owned it for 20 years, they were the very, very best. But she has sold it now, and the new company has some questionable ways that, that's best that you don't do Wings. Now, I mean, if he came to your house and you're like, that's the one, run with it, okay? But in my opinion, he has some questionable ways that I've even asked him about, sat him down and talked about it, and he likes the way he runs things and get out of my face kind of thing. So, I'm just putting that out there. If you love him, run with him, because he might do you just amazing. But on the side of another estate sale company, I do question some of his ways.
What's the name of yours?
I'm Green Light.
Green Light.
And Thunderbird is the other one.
And Thunderbird, now Thunderbird, I know almost every estate sale company in town, except maybe the very newest ones. Thunderbird's amazing. Like I said, the owner is literally an encyclopedia with legs.
You're welcome to take his card here, right?
American's really, really good too.
Mhm. American Household.
They're always on the up and up. They follow everything to the T.
So there's a bunch of them, and let's say that, let's say you were to call me and say, can you do my estate sale, and I am out for 4 or 5 more months, and you need it sooner, then let's talk and let's see if we can find you somebody that I know that you can trust.
Cool, thank you, Sheree.
Sorry.
That's fine, that's great, perfect. That's what you're here, I'm glad you came. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody?
Okay, I do have a question.
Okay,
Now that we have an understanding of why we can't let go, how do we make steps to get into the action mode of letting go?
yeah, so.
Great question.
That was
Great
a
question.
great question.
Great question. I don't know.
I
So,
don't know either.
so one of the things we did talk about was the 30, thanks for coming down.
The 30
Yeah, yeah.
30-day
How's your mom doing?
Moving on, no problem.
Nice, great. So yeah, take some stuff there, good to see you.
I guess
Um,
it's fear.
So
Fear
yeah,
of
it's,
what's gonna happen if you don't decide to move forward and make a plan. I mean, it's kind of, it's like, what if I fall and then I'm no longer in control? What
and the
if,
key here is, yeah, wanting to, if you do it in a proactive way, and then you are in control. And that's the irony, of course, is you want to put that off for a long time, but it kind of needs to get started, and that's the hard part. That's what we talked about. So, Yeah, the one thing that keeps coming up in the literature I read is like, just do those small stuff. Take a little tiny bite out of the
Then
elephant.
the small stuff, you're saying leave in the house, isn't that is what I've heard today, don't touch anything until you move.
If
I
it's-
wanna do it chunk, as
Well,
Lynn
like-
said, a little chunk at a time, and
Like we look, so
then
so
we'll be a estate sale.
so it's, yes, you can do that. So the thing to do is to have Sherry come over, take a look at what has value and what you might want to leave for an estate sale, and then she'll say the rest. You can get rid of the rest. You know, whether that's
And if it's stressing you, get rid of it.
yeah.
If
what-
it's stressing you, I mean,
That's a good
you
point.
might not
I
need an
know,
estate
right?
sale for 2 or 3 years.
that's
But
right.
if there's something in your house that's stressing you today, deal with it today. Don't
And
keep
there-
it for an estate sale.
And I guess talk to your kids first.
That's right.
Always
and
talk
that's,
to the
You
kids,
want
because they will
this, this,
surprise
and
you.
this.
They will surprise you. The most wonky little thing you would think no one would want will be the very thing your children will want.
and that's that little note we had in there that you could write and say, here, you know, what is
My
it?
mother-in-law did that and no one answered her, of her 9 children.
Oh wow. So well, there you have it.
It didn't work.
So-
Yeah,
So,
me-
but that's a
well,
start.
Well, we did want stuff, but we didn't want to say, oh, I want your
Oh, are you
great
dying
big
soon?
something
Yeah.
or other. Be
Oh, you
big.
felt guilty. Oh yeah. So
That's interesting.
so
So my neighbor just had a pot, it called a potlatch. Have you heard of that?
No.
They're from another country. And his dad passed away and he was gonna do an estate sale. And he invited all of the friends to come over before he went back to his country. You could come into the house and pick something that you wanted to take that meant something to you. And I thought that was such a good idea. He said, you know, something that you want, come and take it. It's gonna go to somebody who wants it instead of just always going to the estate sale.
Now, that happens a lot.
Does
Now,
it?
it doesn't
I
have
had
a
never heard
name,
of it
but
before.
let's say that, someone's lived in this neighborhood for 40 years.
Yeah.
And everybody on the block knows them. They've come to their house for meals. They've come to their, they took care of their kids, all these
Yeah,
kind of things.
That's what this
Then
was.
they have the neighbors come in, I'm letting you come in even before you call the estate sale company.
Yeah.
Because by the time you call them, they're like, this is the stuff that's, you
Here.
really don't want that in their head. You wanna get everything out
Yeah.
that you wanna give, that wants
Yeah.
to be given away,
Yeah.
and then the rest, they can see it for what it is, tell you, yes, we'll do one, or no, there's not enough, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
think
I thought it
also-
was interesting. It was
That's a nice way to do it.
it was a
And
nice way for them to let go of a lot of stuff, but as you know, I think you're thinking, if I give something, if you want something, I'll give it to you. But I hate giving away stuff that is just gonna
Well, you're
be
just,
put in a storage shed.
be
Right?
in a storage shed or be put on the Goodwill shelf for $1. It's hard to know what
well,
to do
I
and
also
where.
think when you ask kids, like you said, 9 kids, nobody answered.
Yeah.
You have to really say to them, I'm not being morbid,
That's
we're
what
gonna
she
have an
did. That's what she
estate sale.
said.
And nobody answered.
Well, then she got rid of the stuff,
I
right?
drive Coors Road every day, and even though I think I'm going to live to be 150, I drive Coors Road every day, and if something happens to me, what would you like? And
Wow,
no one-
nobody answered.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Well, so then she ended up hiring an estate sale people to take it away and sell it,
No,
right?
the kids had to do that.
Oh, the kids had to do it?
And that's very stressful.
And then that's, yeah, then,
And then
then,
there's
it-
9 people.
and then they're disputing, or then there's having an argument
Yeah,
afterwards.
they
Then they all
solved
want
that.
But you mentioned you have to have enough stuff to make it worthwhile, is that
You
right?
do.
Oh, that's
300,000
interesting.
things.
But the thing is that when you get a sense of,
Yeah.
when you get sense of what is going to actually have some value and sell, and then the rest, that's when you start, and you can either
Otherwise, what
give
do
it
you do?
away.
Your kids just have to get rid of it for you if you don't.
Yeah.
Lots of times, especially if your kids call in a estate sale company and there's not enough, we have vendors and things like that, like, hey, take it over to the secondhand store for the dogs and cats.
Yeah.
They'll help out.
Or you can combine it maybe with another company like Bill's, right?
Or just say, hey, I know a tiny little company that just started. they have the knowledge, but they, you know, they don't have all the,
Okay.
they haven't been there for
That's a
6
good idea,
years
too.
like we have,
So
then bring
they
them
might
in,
do
because
it,
a little
okay.
tiny company can do a little tiny house
Get some
and
practice.
still get some, and still make $1 off of it, you know what I mean?
My house was broken into, and when the police came, I said they really didn't take much, you know, they dumped out my backpack, they took my cash and a little bit of jewelry, but they didn't take anything. And the policeman looked around and he goes, I hate to tell you this, but you really don't have anything that they would want.
Oh!
Oh
Says
my
all
gosh,
stuff,
what?
all my stuff is old. I don't keep up with all the moderns. And I had to laugh. I was like, well, then maybe I'm okay because nobody wants my
You're
my
safe.
junk anyway.
You're safe.
Yeah, I'm safe. I haven't been broken into since because they
sign
found
up.
out I
Yeah.
have all the stuff. I just have the old stuff. But I think, well, if they would call for an estate sale, you might come in and say, well, I'm not going to do this. All your stuff is old and there's nothing worthwhile here. So
Now,
I
see,
didn't
I
know
would-
what to do
I
with that.
I would come in and let's say that is I would put it much nicer.
You would say it nicer than he
I would
would.
put it very, very
I
nicely.
laughed when
But
he
I would
said
let
it. I
you
thought it
know.
was great.
You know, I can't think of a team that would be interested.
Okay.
And let's find some other ways
Start
to get rid of
boxing
these
it up
things.
for goodwill.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it just made me laugh. I
I
wasn't
would've-
offended
I
by the
would've lost
policeman.
it.
I laughed. I thought it was
That
hilarious.
was terrible. I'm glad you took that well. I really am.
I thought it was hilarious.
Well, yeah, they want the latest and greatest.
But they, yeah,
computer
that's what
and
he
not
said.
your
They don't
old
want this
crummy
old.
TV
Yeah.
that, you know, still works.
But my stuff still works.
Yeah, if it works, why get rid of it?
Yeah.
That's great. So did that kind of answer your question? Like, get a sense from a company about what's valuable, and then start slowly getting rid of the things that.
I have to think of when you say I can sell half a bottle of lotion. I mean, that's to me personally, when my neighbor, I live in a nice neighborhood, they had an estate sale and they sold an open box of crackers. It was disgusting.
Yeah, no,
mean,
I can't see doing
just
that.
Like, oh, and I did, and
Well,
she,
some
and the woman,
spices.
they moved out of town and left the.
Right, you did it right.
And there were costumes hanging there from the woman who had been dancing and things, and I went home and I
Dancing
rid
things.
myself of my costumes. Because I didn't want anybody to see those costumes after I was gone. I mean, it was, oh Lord.
I'm in this.
See, you started.
Well,
I'm in
yeah.
this.
Yeah, but
I'm in
I
this
stopped.
this beautiful lady's will, and she cracks me up. She was like, "Sherry, you're in the will, and all it says in there is anything in the underwear drawers goes in the trash." I said, "Okay, that's all. I got that. No problem.
Yeah, some of
No
that
one
stuff,
needs to see your undies. Okay, well, I'm good."
some of that stuff you don't want anyway.
Yeah. And she wrote it in the will that way. It was the funniest thing.
That is funny.
That's cute. Thank you very much for this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?